family farm and our seed to plate special, where we're taking you from the way that we start crops and get them seeded and transplanted in the ground, all the way to harvesting, and then how we use the crops in the kitchen. And this week's crop is summer squash. We're right in the heat of summer right now. The days have been real hot and it's dry, and it's kind of that time of year where you realize there's not much you can go back on. You know, what we planned out in the spring and what we got in the ground, that's what we have to harvest now, and it's not something where we still have time to make that decision like, let's add one more plant of this or adjust this or that. In fact, we're already starting now to look ahead to winter and thinking through what do we need to be getting in the ground now to have some things to harvest through the fall and then even into the winter, and planning ahead to next year. So one of the things though that comes with this time of year is we are harvesting a lot, and all that work that we put in earlier in the year is starting to come to fruition as we're able to harvest. And summer squash is one of those crops that is really peak harvest right now. And summer squash, you know, I think classically what people think of is zucchini, which that's what I have in my hand here. I've got a traditional green zucchini as well as a yellow zucchini squash, and that's, I think, just the standard, you know, the summer squash that is so versatile and so many people think of. But there's a lot of variety in summer squashes. We also grow a pattypan squash, which is a totally different shape. But really, I think what separates summer squash from winter squash is not just the harvest window where, you know, winter squashes are typically harvesting later in the fall, but also just the way that you can use them. Summer squash are typically very tender, and you can eat the whole entire fruit. You know, winter squashes are the classic where the skin, the outer portion of the fruit, is not something that's all that edible, and you're typically cooking it to soften up everything. Summer squashes you could eat raw, and some preparations you can use it raw. We do oftentimes cook the summer squash and find that it's often works out better for us that way. But there's a lot of versatility behind them, and they're such a nice, you know, they add sustenance, they add kind of volume to any dish when you're using it, and it's kind of a nice feature of the crop. One of the features also of growing summer squash is they're just like all squash. They classically, you know, you start out with this seed that's not a very big seed, and it grows into this just ginormous plant. And zucchinis and pattypans in particular are squash that don't really vine at all. You think of pumpkins and some of the winter squashes are often more vining, and some summer squashes do it as well. But one of the nice features with these is it's a big plant, but it stays kind of compact. It doesn't vine all over the place. And so it works out with our kind of smaller garden beds and being able to grow them in the hoop house. And that's where we've grown these crops this season, is in the hoop house. And I'll show you just a little bit kind of what the plants look like here at full maturity. You can see they have these nice large leaves to them. And then the fruit comes off of the flowers that form and come right in the middle of the plant. And they're a crop that can grow so quickly. You know, something that's this size, you know, 5-6 inches long, can grow just, especially this time of year. Like I said, it's hot, it's dry, the days are still pretty long. I mean, this thing can grow into the size of a baseball bat in just a matter of days, it seems like. And so when you harvest summer squash is kind of a point of personal preference. Depending on how we plan on using it, we want squash of different sizes. And so this size right here, like I said, 5-6 inches long, is really my favorite size if the plan is just to saute it or grill it and really eat it pretty much fresh. Just a little drizzle of olive oil and some salt and pepper, grilled or sauteed, and I think the squash is just really delicious at this size right here. So we harvest a lot when we're just taking it straight in the kitchen at this size, but you get a little more bang for your buck, I guess, in terms of the sustenance and the quantity of food that you get when you allow the fruit to grow. This is kind of a mid-size zucchini, which I think is what I consider about as big as we typically want. But this size is really useful. You know, a lot of people will use summer squashes as a substitute for pasta if you can't eat grain. And this size is really great where you can julienne it into kind of fine strips, and then saute it or steam it and use it as an alternative to pasta and spaghetti and things like that. And so this is a size that I really like. We do sometimes let a few just go really huge because we have some customers who really like the really big squash. I'm talking sometimes even 3 times the size of this one. And oftentimes I think the best way to be able to use that is to food process it and really just kind of grind it down and use it in breads and things like that. And that's I think classically what's used in a lot of zucchini breads, which is a classic use of zucchini. But other summer squashes have different uses, sometimes based on their shape and just based on their flavor. I think grilling is a classic preparation for squash, but it's like I said, very versatile crop that you can do a lot of things with in the kitchen. As we're harvesting, they're really quite simple to harvest, and you can see, you saw how they were growing on the plant, and all we really use is a harvest knife to cut the plant off, just above where the fruit has formed off the stem, and that's really all it takes. A quick rinse just before you're going to use it is a good idea, but beyond that, there's not any post-harvest processing that's required. One of the things you want to be careful with is make sure you're using a knife to cut it off and not just pulling on it. When you just pull on it, a lot of times the stem will break, perhaps kind of break off the fruit, which then that portion of the fruit can kind of harden or start to rot a little bit sometimes. And then you can also sometimes, if it's a really large fruit and you pull on it hard enough, you can pull the whole plant right out of the ground if you're not careful. And so I really recommend using a knife for harvest. But like I said, it's a real easy crop to come out, cut 1 or 2 off, take them directly into the kitchen and make a meal out of it. So we'll show you a preparation in the kitchen here, and we hope you're having a good summer and enjoying all this warmth that the summer has blessed us with.
Hello everyone, welcome to the kitchen this evening. As Steve mentioned, this week we are focusing on summer squash. And as he said in the garden portion of this video, there's so many great ways to use summer squash, everything from the traditional zucchini bread to a simple saute, using it as a zoodle in place of noodles. However, this evening we are going to focus on a roasted ratatouille dish. So ratatouille is a French Provençal vegetable stew, which can be served plain as is, but we are actually going to do it on top of toasted sourdough toast. And so we are going to put a little bit of a goat cheese spread on it, but it would be great with a creme fraiche. It's sometimes a little bit harder to find out here where we are, but if you have access to creme fraiche in a specialty market, that would be a great option. So we'll just put a little goat cheese on here and a little bit of our roasted ratatouille. So in here we have tomatoes, eggplant, bell peppers, onions, garlic, and of course our summer squash. So we just went out and harvested all of these fresh vegetables this evening. It's part of why I love this dish, because all of these vegetables really are ripe at the same time in the summer, and so it's a great little roasted dish that could be used as our dinner, as it is this evening, or it could be perfect as an appetizer. So we'll sprinkle it with a little bit of fresh basil, perhaps do a little bit of fresh ground salt and pepper. It's gonna be for dinner, Aspen, that's why. And here is our ratatouille. Why? And tonight's roasted ratatouille toast was inspired by our friend Andrea over at Dishing Up the Dirt. She's also from Portland, Oregon, and we have so many fun connections, so it was great to make one of her recipes.